I used to think my life was too small for big disasters or big miracles. Just a quiet girl in a cheap apartment, working double shifts, trying not to make noise in a world that already scared me enough. I was wrong. The night my leg snapped, I realized there are people whose shadows touch your life long before you ever know their names. My face was on the kitchen tiles, cheek pressed against something sticky. I remember thinking it was orange juice, even though I knew it was blood from my own mouth. The world pulsed in and out of focus with every heartbeat. In the broken glass of the microwave door I could see half my face, swollen lip, one eye already turning purple. Somewhere behind me the chair lay on its side. Somewhere above me his footsteps went back and forth, like he couldn't decide if he was done. "You made me do this." Daniel's voice shook high and angry the way it always did right after he hit me. "Why do you push me like that? Why, Elena?" I wanted to answer, I wanted to say, "I only asked why you took my tips from my bag." I wanted to remind him he had promised again and again that he would never raise his hand to me. But when I tried to talk, only this wet, ugly sound came out. My body was shaking too hard and all I could feel was my right leg. You don't really understand the word broken until a part of your body doesn't feel like it belongs to you. My leg lay at an angle that made no sense, the pain so sharp and bright my mind tried to run away from it. The more I tried not to look, the louder it screamed inside me. Every breath tasted like metal and dust. He stood over me, chest rising and falling, knuckles red. For a second his face softened like he could see what he had done. For a second I thought he might cry. He always did this, hurt me then hurt himself with guilt. But then his phone buzzed in his pocket and just like that the shame vanished. His eyes went flat. He glanced down at me as if I was something he'd dropped by accident. "I need air," he muttered. "Don't go anywhere." He actually laughed at his own joke, opened the door and walked out. The apartment fell quiet in that heavy way when the person who terrifies you has finally left. I could hear the fridge buzzing. The broken ceiling fan above me ticked every few seconds. My heartbeat was so loud it sounded like someone knocking on wood. I don't know how long I lay there, but fear has its own clock. At some point the thought cut through the fog, if he comes back like this he'll kill you. The idea wasn't dramatic, it was simple, like a fact written on a page. My hand started to move before I felt it, fingers dragging over the cold tiles, searching blindly. The universe shrank to the impossible distance between me and my phone. Every few centimeters the pain stabbed up the length of my body, white and blinding, threatening to knock me out. "Don't pass out," I whispered to myself, my voice cracked. "Elena, don't you dare sleep." I found the phone by sound, not sight, the small, familiar clack when my nails tapped its edge. I curled my fingers around it like it was the last solid thing in the world and pulled it close to my face. The screen lit up, almost burning my eyes. 2% battery, no signal bars, just one thin line struggling to hold on. I swallowed a sob and opened my messages. My thumb shook so much I could barely hit the right letters. I didn't have time to explain. I didn't have the strength to be polite. I just typed the first thing that my terror translated into words. "He broke my leg. Please, help me, call the police." I hit send to the last number I had texted that afternoon, not even looking at the name. In my head, I saw my friend Sophia's face, her messy bun, the way she always smelled like cheap perfume and coffee. I pictured her picking up her phone, reading my message and running. The message sent her. One check mark, then two. I waited, staring at the screen so hard my eyes hurt. My breath came in shallow, sharp pulls. 1 second, 2 seconds, 10, no reply. I blinked and everything blurred. Maybe she was at work, maybe she didn't see it, maybe. A small thought, thin and cold, slid into my mind. Check who you sent it to. I forced my thumb up to the top of the screen. The name wasn't Sophia. It was just a number, no photo, no name. Unknown +39 with numbers I didn't recognize. For one moment nothing existed but that string of digits. My heart dropped like the floor vanished beneath it. I had sent my cry for help to a stranger, not just any text but this text. "He broke my leg, please help me." My thumb hovered over the screen. I could send another message, try again with Sophia. But the battery icon was red and thin and already threatening to disappear. What if the phone died in the middle? What if I lost all chance to reach anyone? The phone vibrated in my hand. One new message. I opened it with my breath lodged in my throat. "Send me your address." No name, no question mark, no "who is this?" No "are you okay?" just 4 words, calm and clean, cutting through the panic like a knife. Something about the way it was written didn't feel like a stranger from a random wrong number. It felt like someone used to giving orders, not asking questions, the kind of person who didn't waste words. Fear tightened my chest in a different way now. I had spent 3 years learning to be afraid of a man who shouted, who threw plates, who apologized and then did it again. Whoever this was felt dangerous in a much quieter way. I stared at the screen, my vision pulsing at the edges. I thought of all the stories my mother used to whisper when I was little, stories about men who could make people disappear with just a phone call, men whose names no one said out loud, who gave with one hand and destroyed with the other, men who walked in and out of police stations like they owned them. "Don't ever owe those people anything, Elena," she used to say. "Their kindness is heavier than their bullets." My thumb trembled over the keyboard. If I sent my address, I might be inviting that kind of person into my life, into my home, into my story. If I didn't, Daniel might come back first. Another message arrived before I could decide. "You have 1 minute, battery dies soon, choose." I hadn't told him about the battery. I hadn't told him anything but that single, desperate sentence. Yet he spoke like he was right here, seeing what I saw, feeling the clock ticking with me. A hot tear slipped sideways into my ear. My leg throbbed so violently I felt sick. My whole body was one long scream trying to stay inside my skin. In that moment, courage didn't look like something bright. It looked like a tired girl on a kitchen floor, choosing between 2 different kinds of fear. I typed my address, slowly, carefully. Every letter felt like I was signing a contract with a ghost. When I hit send, the screen flickered. For a heartbeat, I thought the phone would die right there and make the whole thing useless. But the message pushed through. 1 check mark, 2. No answer came. The seconds stretched, the fridge hummed. Somewhere in the building, a baby cried and was quickly silenced. A car drove past outside and faded into the night. I waited for another message, any sign that I hadn't just handed my life to a stranger and vanished into his inbox. Nothing. The battery icon flashed red and empty. The screen went black. For the first time that night, a different kind of silence entered the apartment. Heavy, expectant, like the air before a storm. I don't know how much time passed before I heard them. Engines, more than one. Not loud show-off engines, but a low, controlled rumble that rolled through the old walls. Then brakes, doors opening and closing in a rhythm too precise to be coincidence. My neighborhood was usually full of noise, music from upstairs, arguing in the hallway, kids running and screaming. But one by one, those sounds thinned out, as if someone was turning the volume knob of the whole building down. Footsteps rose from the stairwell, not rushed, not confused. Slow, steady steps, like the person climbing already knew exactly where they were going and what they would find there. My heart pounded so hard against the tiles, I felt each beat in my teeth. They stopped in front of my door. For a second, nothing moved. No knock, no voice, just the weight of someone standing on the other side, breathing. I dragged my head toward the peephole, every movement sending white-hot fire up my broken leg. I managed to lift myself a few centimeters, my fingers clawing at the cabinet to pull my face close enough to see. Through the blurred glass, I could make out a tall man in a dark coat, the collar turned up. 2 other shadows stood a little behind him, their shapes blocking the light from the stairwell. He leaned in, and for a brief moment his eyes lined up perfectly with the peephole. I had expected cruelty, or excitement, or at least curiosity. What I saw instead, in that narrow circle of glass, was something that didn't make sense on a stranger's face at my door in the middle of the night. I saw anger, yes, but behind it, buried deep and controlled, was a kind of tired sadness, and a quiet, dangerous promise of protection I had never seen in anyone's eyes before. His lips moved. I couldn't hear the words through the door, but I could read them. "Open the door, Elena." He already knew my name. The first thing he did was not knock again. The lock cracked like a gunshot, wood splintering inward as the door flew open. A gust of cold night air swept over the floor, carrying in the smell of rain and car exhaust and something clean, expensive cologne under trace of cigarette smoke. 2 men stepped in first, dark silhouettes filling the doorway, hands empty but bodies tense in that way I had only ever seen in movies about men who kill for a living. Then he walked in. From the floor I saw him in pieces, Black leather shoes stepping carefully around broken glass, the long line of a dark coat, the slow, controlled way he moved as if every muscle waited for a signal. He didn't rush to me. His eyes moved once around the apartment, registering everything: the fallen chair, the blood on the tiles, the crooked angle of my leg, the door hanging broken on its hinge. Only when he had the whole picture did he kneel. "Elena," he said, and the way my name sounded in his mouth made something in my chest pull tight. Low voice, Italian vowels, calm in a way that felt wrong in the middle of my disaster. "Don't try to move." Up close he didn't look like the monsters from my mother's stories. No gold chains, no loud shirt. His hair was dark, cut short with a few threads of grey at his temples. His jaw was clean-shaven, the lines around his mouth deeper than a young man's, the kind that come from frowning more than laughing. His eyes were the strangest part, dark, tired, but sharp, like he could see straight through the excuses I had been telling myself for years. A strange shame washed over me. I was suddenly aware of my torn t-shirt, the old leggings, the bruises already blooming on my arms like ugly flowers. I can't," I whispered, hating how small my voice sounded. "My leg, I think it's broken," he finished quietly. "Sigh, I can see that." He shrugged off his coat and folded it, sliding it under my head so my cheek wouldn't rest on the sticky floor. The leather was still warm from his body, smelling of rain and tobacco and something like cedar. No one had ever moved so quickly to make me more comfortable after hurting me. Daniel used to just tell me to get up like I was lazy. Who are you?" My throat burned with every word. "How do you know my name?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced up at the men hovering at the doorway. "Kitchen and bedroom, clear them," he said softly in Italian. "If you find him, bring him to me, breathing but not proud." They vanished without argument, boots silent on the old tiles. No one asked why, no one asked who him was. It was enough that their boss had seen my leg. He turned back to me, eyes scanning my face like he was cataloguing every bruise. "Where is he?" he asked, "the man who did this?" The question hit me harder than I expected. The man, 3 years of my life reduced to a shape without a name. Part of me wanted to lie like I always had, to say I fell, that it was an accident. Instinct is a stubborn thing, it doesn't care how much pain you're in. Protect the man, protect the relationship, protect the lie. He laughed, I said he needed air. His jaw flexed once. "Your boyfriend?" The word tasted wrong in my ears. I nodded, feeling the heat of humiliation rising to my face. His eyes darkened, the softness hardening into something colder but not louder. He didn't curse, he didn't raise his voice. Somehow that scared me more. "Uomini di murder," he murmured, "men of shit. Men who break what they are supposed to protect are not men." He reached into his coat, my heart jumped, but he only pulled out a slim phone and spoke into it low and fast. Italian washed over me. "Third floor left side, yes, now bring Marco and the doctor, no sirens." "No police," I rasped. His gaze cut to me, sharp but not angry. "Do you trust the police, Elena?" I thought of the one time I had almost called them after Daniel had grabbed my throat in the street and shoved me against a wall. A passing couple had stared, then quickly looked away. When I finally found the courage, I imagined myself sitting under those white lights answering questions, their bored eyes sliding to the clock. He said he was sorry, Signora. You could go back home if you want. Do you really want to cause trouble? Silence was easier. Pain at home was quieter than paperwork. "I don't know," I admitted. "Good," he said simply. "You are honest. Tonight the police will only make noise. Noise attracts the wrong ears." A crash sounded from the bedroom, drawer pulled too hard, the slap of a closet door against the wall. His men were searching, hunting. I swallowed. "You got my message," I said slowly. "I sent it to the wrong number, I didn't mean." "There are no wrong numbers," he cut in without looking offended or amused, just stating a fact like the sky is blue, only calls that are answered and calls that are ignored. He held up his phone so I could see my own words on the screen. "He broke my leg. Please, help me, call the police." "I was in a restaurant," he said calmly as if he was explaining the weather. "We were talking business, important men, important problems." My phone vibrated and I almost left it. His mouth twitched, the ghost of something like bitterness, but I have learned to respect interruptions. His thumb brushed over the screen once, a small, unconscious movement. "Tell me something," he said. "When you typed this, why did you not write his name?" I stared at the letters on the small glass, my heart thudding. It was a good question, I hadn't thought about it. In my mind, he was always Daniel. Daniel who apologized, Daniel who cried, Daniel who promised to change. But in that one moment he had become something else, something my body recognized and my fingers refused to define. I don't know, I whispered. Maybe I was ashamed. He nodded slowly, like he understood too well. My sister wrote a message once, he said quietly, eyes never leaving mine. She wrote a name, it didn't save her. Shame didn't kill her, Elena. Time did. Minutes, seconds, people like me counting money instead of minutes. He looked away, jaw tight. For a brief second there was no mafia boss in front of me, just a man who had been too late. But you wrote fast, he added, before you blacked out. That is courage. Courage, the word sat strange on my skin, like a jacket that didn't fit yet. His fingers moved toward my leg. He stopped a few centimeters away. May I? He asked. No one had asked permission to touch me in a long time. Not Daniel, not the doctors at the clinic where I sometimes went for cheap checkups, not the men who brushed past me on the bus. Yes, I managed. He pressed gently around my ankle, his touch firm but careful. Pain exploded white and blinding. I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood. His face didn't flinch, but his hand moved to my shoulder, steadying me as if I might float away from my own body. It's bad, he said softly, but you will walk again, you will run if you want. If I want, I echoed, half laughing, half crying. I just want to not die on my kitchen floor. Tonight you will not die, he said, and there was no drama in it, no big hero tone, just certainty. I give you my word. From the hallway came the low murmur of his men, then footsteps returning. One of them, broad-shouldered with a shaved head, appeared in the doorway. No one here, he said in Italian. His clothes, his things, some are gone, half-packed, looks like he left in a hurry. He'll come back, I whispered before I could stop myself. He always comes back. The boss, whoever he was, tilted his head slightly, studying me. Not the kind of study you do when you're curious about gossip, but the kind you do when you're deciding a sentence. Good, he said. The word startled me, good. Men who run from what they break think they are safe when they come back, he said. They believe nothing has changed. That is when the lesson enters. Before I could ask what kind of lesson he meant, a sound sliced through the thick air. The metallic clink of keys at the end of the hallway, a familiar, sloppy rhythm of footsteps, a man humming off-key, the way Daniel always did when he had just enough to drink to feel invincible, not enough to stumble. Every muscle in my body went rigid. He was here. The boss's eyes flicked toward the doorway, and for the first time I saw the shift. The sadness closed, the gentleness slid behind glass. What remained was ice-cold focus. He rose from his knees with a fluidity that didn't fit a man his age, stepping between me and the door in a way that felt both protective and absolute. Stay awake, he told me softly without looking down, and do not speak unless I ask you to, capito. I nodded, my mouth suddenly dry. The broken door creaked as someone on the other side tried to push it, confused by the damaged lock. The handle shook, a curse mumbled under his breath. He shoved harder. The wood scraped over the floor, opening just enough for me to see a slice of the hallway, and then Daniel's hand, his jacket, his profile, as he forced his way back into the apartment he thought he still owned. Daniel stumbled in mid-sentence, words slurred with cheap beer, and I told him, man, you don't tell me. The rest died in his throat. He had never been the type to stop talking. Noise was his armor, but the sight that greeted him stole even that. A stranger in a dark coat stood calm and still in the center of our ruined kitchen, two other men flanking the door like shadows given weight, and me on the floor, head resting on a leather coat that wasn't his, my leg twisted and swollen, blood drying at the corner of my mouth. For a long second, no one spoke. I saw it all in Daniel's face. The confusion, the first flash of fear, then the quick attempt to cover it with anger. The hell is this? He snapped, voice cracking higher than usual. Who are you? What are you doing in my apartment? It hit me in that moment. He still called it his apartment. His, even with me broken on the floor because of him. The man in the coat turned toward him, unhurried. He seemed almost bored, but there was a tension in the air that made every movement feel sharp. This is her apartment, the man said quietly, nodding toward me. You are only a guest. The accent in his English was stronger now, the consonants clean and deliberate. His calm cut through Daniel's bravado like a knife. Daniel laughed, a short, ugly sound. Bro, I don't know who told you could just break into people's houses, but you have 3 seconds to get the fuck out before I. He took a step forward. The man on the left was in front of him before he could blink, one hand on Daniel's chest, pushing him back with just enough pressure to prove he could do much worse. Don't touch me, Daniel snapped, trying to shove his hand away. He failed. The other man's arm didn't even move. You are Daniel? The boss asked, ignoring the display, his eyes never leaving Daniel's face. So what if I am? Daniel spat. Elena, what is this? Who are these people? He looked at me then, really looked, and for a split second his expression wavered. His gaze fell to my leg, to the angle that wasn't human, to the bruises already dark on my neck. His Adam's apple bobbed. You're fine, he said, but it sounded like he was trying to convince himself. She falls all the time, she's clumsy. I went out for 5 minutes, I come back and… 5 minutes, the boss repeated softly. Long enough to pack some of your clothes, it seems, long enough to drink. His nostrils flared slightly, long enough to leave her bleeding on the floor. He walked toward Daniel, each step measured, forcing Daniel to feel the distance closing. Tell me, the boss said, which leg did you break? The air vibrated with the question. Daniel blinked, thrown off. I didn't, she slipped, I didn't. A quiet sound cut him off. Not a shout, not a curse. A laugh, low and without humor, from one of the men by the door. It wasn't mocking. It was the sound of someone who had heard a lie too many times to be entertained by it anymore. My heart was pounding so loud I could feel it in my neck. Part of me wanted to speak, to scream, to tell the truth. Another part, the part Daniel had trained well, whispered, stay silent, don't make it worse. You know what happens when you embarrass him. The boss stopped an arm's length from Daniel and pointed calmly at my leg without looking back. That one, he said, you broke that one. I told you I didn't. Careful, the boss murmured, you only get to lie to me once. Something in his voice changed on the last word. It dropped heavy and final, even Daniel heard it. His shoulders tensed, his eyes flickered toward the door, calculating distances, exits. He found none. I won't ask again, the boss continued. You broke her leg. Silence stretched between them like a wire. Daniel's chest rose and fell faster. A bead of sweat rolled down from his hairline, cutting a clean line through the dust on his temple. She made me angry, he muttered finally. She knows how to push me, she. The back of the boss's hand connected with Daniel's mouth so fast my brain almost didn't register the movement. No big swing, no wind-up, just a simple, efficient impact. The sound was muted, ugly. Daniel's head snapped sideways, he staggered back, catching himself against the wall. Blood bloomed on his lip. Try again, the boss said softly. Use only your name this time, not hers. What? Daniel breathed. Say I broke a leg, the boss said. Or say I'm a coward, choose one quickly. My lungs burned. I had never seen anyone talk to Daniel like that, strip away his excuses instead of feeding them. He spat blood onto the floor, chest heaving. His eyes found mine for a heartbeat, full of hatred and fear and a twisted kind of pleading. The look said, help me. It also said, if you don't, I will make you pay. I thought of every apology, every bouquet of stolen flowers from the gas station, every I only hit you because I love you, baby, you know that, right? I thought of every time I had cleaned blood from the bathroom sink and told myself it was the last time. He broke my leg, I whispered. The room stilled. I hadn't planned to speak. The words crawled out of my chest on their own, hoarse and small, but somehow they carried. Everyone heard them. Daniel flinched like I had slapped him. Elena, he growled warningly. You said you wanted the truth, I croaked, my throat trembling. There it is. The boss's head inclined half a centimeter, acknowledgement and respect in that tiny gesture. Brava, he said softly, almost to himself. There she is. He turned back to Daniel. You heard her, he said. Now you will do the same. Daniel's face twisted. You don't get to tell me what to say in my own. The boss didn't touch him this time. He just took one step forward into Daniel's space and looked at him. Really looked, no shouting, no threats, just a steady, unbroken stare that said, I have ended men for less than what you did tonight, and I slept well after. Whatever Daniel saw there stripped the rest of his bravado away. I broke her leg, he mumbled. The words sounded foreign in his mouth. Louder, the boss said. I broke her leg, Daniel repeated, voice shaking. Good, the boss replied. Now we understand each other. He glanced over his shoulder at me. Elena, he said, in my world, when someone breaks what belongs to him, he pays. When someone breaks what does not belong to him, he pays more. He paused. Tonight I will break nothing you do not choose. It took me a second to grasp what he was offering. My head was foggy with pain, but the meaning slid in, slow and heavy. He was asking for my permission. Do you want him to walk out of this building? He asked, each word deliberate. Yes or no, no explanations, no guilt, just your answer. The room shrank around us. My heartbeat moved into my ears, my throat, my mouth. Daniel stared at me wide-eyed, all the arrogance dissolved into a raw, terrified boy. If you say no, the boss continued quietly, he will not leave on his own legs. If you say yes, I send him away and he will not come near you again. Either way, you will not see his face in your doorway tomorrow. This I swear to you. Power, real, sharp-edged power, sat between us, waiting for me to touch it. I had never been asked what I wanted, not like this, not with real consequences attached. My life had been a series of trying to survive other people's choices, my father's absence, my mother's debts, Daniel's hands. Now 3 letters balanced on my tongue. Yes, no, either one would change something fundamental inside me. I looked at Daniel. He was crying silently, tears mixing with the blood on his chin, his shoulders shaking. Somewhere under the anger and the fear there was a familiarity that hurt. Every shared joke, every cheap meal we had eaten together at this same table before he flipped it in a rage. Once I had loved him. Once I had thought I could fix him. That version of me was gone, broken with my leg, but she had left something behind, a stubborn belief that becoming like the people who hurt you was its own kind of death. My voice came out weak but clear. Yes, I whispered, I want him to walk out. Daniel sagged with relief so sharp it almost turned into a sob. The boss watched me, something complex moving in his eyes, surprise, then slowly a flicker of what might have been pride. You are merciful, he said, even when he did not earn it. I'm not doing it for him, I said. I'm doing it for me. I don't want his blood on my floor. His mouth curved just at one corner, not quite a smile, more like a brief easing of tension. As you wish. He snapped his fingers once. The sound was soft but carried like a command through the room. The 2 men moved. One grabbed Daniel by the back of his neck, forcing him to bend. The other took his arm. Daniel yelped. Wait, you said. I said you will walk out, the boss replied calmly. I did not say you would enjoy the walk. What happened next I mostly heard more than saw. I turned my head toward the ceiling, focusing on the water stain in the corner. On the way, the light from the hallway cut a pale stripe across the wall. Behind me there was a crack, bone meeting a force it couldn't resist, a strangled scream, the heavy pant of someone trying not to throw up from pain, the wet sound of tears and spit and apologies too late. My fingers clawed at the coat beneath my cheek. A part of me wanted to cover my ears, to pretend nothing was happening. Another part, a new part, stayed very still and listened, not with satisfaction but with a strange, quiet acknowledgement. There are people in this world who will stand between you and the ones who hurt you, and they will not always be wearing uniforms. When it was over, there was the shuffling drag of someone being half carried, half walking toward the door. The boss didn't look back. He watched my face instead. You don't have to feel anything about this now, he said softly. Not relief, not guilt. Pain takes all the space first, the rest comes later. The broken door screeched, then thumped shut as best as it could. Footsteps faded down the stairs. For the first time since the engines had arrived, the apartment was quiet again. The quiet felt different now, not the usual smallness, not that feeling of being trapped in a box. This was empty space, space where something had been cut out. The boss knelt by me again, slowly, as if approaching a wounded animal that might decide to bite. You did well, he said. Many people, when given the choice, choose revenge. You chose a border. A border, I asked. He nodded, a line he cannot cross again, and a line you will remember the next time someone tries to step over you. Who says there will be a next time? I muttered. The thought made me tired in a way painkillers couldn't touch. His eyes softened. Because there is always a next time, Elena, he said quietly. Life doesn't stop sending wolves. We just learn to grow teeth, or we borrow someone else's. My laugh came out as a choked sob. Tears blurred my vision. I didn't know if I was crying for what had just happened, or for all the times I had wished for someone like him to appear and thought I was stupid for believing in rescuers. "Who are you?" I asked again, the question heavier now. "Really?" He hesitated just for a heartbeat. Then he reached into his jacket, still under my head, pulled out a small black leather wallet and flipped it open. Not to a badge, to a simple card, white with a name printed in clean black letters. He held it where I could read. Salvatore Romano. The name hit something in the back of my memory. My mother's voice, hushed in the kitchen when she thought I was asleep. "Romano's people, El Jefe, you don't play with that family, Elena." Words like Camorra and favor and debt floating in half-remembered conversations. I looked from the card to his face. He watched me carefully, measuring my reaction. "You've heard the name," he said, not a question. "My mother," I swallowed. "She used to say your name like it was all the bad luck in the world rolled into one word." He exhaled through his nose, a sound halfway between a sigh and a bitter laugh. "Mothers are often right," he said, "but not always complete." He put the card away, then rested one hand lightly on the floor beside my shoulder, not touching me but close enough that I could feel the heat from his skin. "Tonight I am only the man who answered your message," he said. "Nothing more. Later, if you wish, I can be the man you blame for everything. For now, I need you to stay conscious a little longer. My doctor is coming. After that, you will not stay here." Where will I go? The question tasted like salt in my mouth. Leaving sounded good. Leaving also sounded like stepping off a cliff. "A place where no one opens your door without your permission," he said. "Where the nurses don't ask why you fell down the stairs for the third time this year." He must have seen the fear creeping back into my eyes, because his tone softened even more. "I am not your owner, Elena," he said quietly. "You can say no to me even now. You can ask me to leave and I will leave you with an ambulance and the broken door." His gaze searched mine. "But if you come with me, I will owe you something, a debt, and I pay my debts heavily." My mother's warning echoed in my head. Their kindness is heavier than their bullets. He extended his hand toward me, palm up, fingers steady. "This is your choice," he said. "One small yes, one small no. Your life will not be the same either way. But if you are tired of being afraid of the wrong man." He paused, and for the first time his own fear showed, small but real, in the lines near his eyes. "Try being afraid of me instead. I promise you I am at least honest about the danger." My gaze dropped to his hand. Strong, clean, a faint white scar running across his index finger, as if someone had once tried to take something from him and failed. My leg throbbed, my head spun. Outside, somewhere in the street, an engine started, then faded into the night. I thought of my tiny life, my double shifts, my careful silence, the way my world had shrunk around Daniel's moods until there was almost nothing left of me. With my heart slamming against my ribs, with fear and something like hope wrestling in my chest, I did the first selfish thing I had dared to do in years. I lifted my hand, inch by inch, through the pain and placed it in his. In that moment, on that dirty kitchen floor, I knew two things with terrifying clarity. My mother had been right about men like him, and I was going to walk straight into his world anyway.